Hello my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon. This back here, that's Bernard. He's my October co-host. He likes to hang around, keep things spooky, but he doesn't say much. Anyway, today we are talking about Catherine House by Elisabeth Thomas. I love the colors in this cover. Anyway, this book came out a few years ago, I think in 2020, and I'd heard a ton of people talking about it over the years. Never got around to reading it, and I finally have now, and I'm happy to get to tell you guys about it. So basically, Catherine House is an elite boarding school, a university of sorts. It's very elite. If you get chosen to go there, your tuition is free. But by accepting a place there, you're giving up the outside world, basically. For 3 years, you do not leave the premises at all. There's a gate around the house, and you do not leave. But from this school come brilliant minds. People all over the world who have studied there go on to have big jobs doing big things in the world. And people on the outside don't know much about the house, but they know that something incredible is happening there. So basically we meet Inez. She's a young girl who's been running her whole life. She had sort of a tough upbringing, and then when she got into her older teens, she was constantly getting in trouble. And one night something terrible happens, and that leads her to go on the run. At the behest of one of her high school teachers, she applies to go to Catherine. And she gets accepted, and so off she goes. And once she gets there, things aren't quite what they seem. Or rather, things aren't quite what she thought they were going to be. As she learns more and more about the inner workings of the school, she starts to wonder, did she make a mistake? Does she belong here? The rules are very strict, and there's what they call the tower, which is I can't remember how it was worded in the book, like a rehabilitation center or a restoration center, they call it. Anyway, you only get sent there if you've broken some rules, you're in trouble in some way. It's not a place you want to end up. And anyway, in the first chapter, we meet Inez and her roommate, Baby. And from there, things just kind of get rolling. So that's all I'll tell you before we get into the spoilers. But let me just say I enjoyed it. I think it's going to be 4 stars for me. I will say, when I was looking into the book, one of the genres it's tagged under is horror. I wouldn't say it's not horror at all in the traditional sense. It's not scary in that kind of way. I guess maybe you'd call it speculative fiction, because there's definitely some sort of things going on which we'll get into, but I definitely wouldn't call it horror. But I enjoyed it. I would say the first 100 pages are very slow. So if you're looking for something that's fast-paced right from the get-go, this is not it. It's definitely a slow burn. It's very atmospheric inside of this school, sort of dark academia vibes, if you like that kind of thing. There's a lot of that here. And it's a lot of, going to classes, talking to other students about what classes they're taking, things like that. So, yeah, it's a slow build-up, but once it gets going, it's very interesting. So yeah, if you don't want any spoilers, now's definitely the time to get going. But if you want to hear about it or talk about it, if you've read it, or even if you don't plan on reading it, you just want to hear me talk about it for a while, we're going to get on in it. So skedaddle. Anyway, so like I said, it's slow from the beginning. It's just like a lot of talking, doing daily things, a lot of drinking and hanging out and studying. But then once things start going, we learn that the school is doing experiments on the students. There's a discipline within the school which is called the new materials discipline, the new materials concentration, and that has something to do with what they call plasm. And what they do to the students is they gather them up and they put what what do you call it? I was gonna say nodules, but like they'd stick these things to their heads and to their stomachs, and then they lay and they're kind of out of it. And then they come out and they feel better than they ever have. And the way it's explained to them is that healing happens with these plasms, and soon they will forget all about the terrible things in their pasts, and they'll be able to move forward with the studying that they're doing at the school. And Inez she's not into that. She's like, I don't like this at all. And the first time it happens to her, some of the not nodules, why can't I think of the word? The the things they're sticking to her fall off. Anyway, so she's on the verge of failing because she doesn't go to class. She doesn't study. Eventually she's pulled aside and they're like, listen, we don't want you to fall out of here. We don't want to have to kick you out. So like, you have nowhere to go. You were on the run when we found you. You have nowhere to go. So you better get your act together. So she does for a while. One time she ends up in the tower, which is this, like, it's crazy what happens there. You go in, you have to take off all your clothes. And the whole time you're in this tiny little room that just has a bed and a couple of books, you're naked. And you're left there until they think you should go back to your dormitory. And for her, I think it's 5 days the first time. Anyway, more time passes and her roommate, Baby, who we know she's a troubled girl. When Inez first meets her, Baby tells her that her sister died in an accident. And then one day, in a moment of like vulnerability and confession, she's like, that's a lie. She's not dead. She just moved away and I'm mad at her. And Inez is kind of like, oh, I don't know this girl at all. Anyway, eventually Baby gets sent to the tower one day. Inez doesn't know why. It seems weird because Baby's like a very studious girl. Like, she's constantly studying, working so hard. She really believes in what's going on at Catherine House. And she learns that Baby has been sent to the tower for 2 weeks. And then before the 2 weeks are up, she's walking through the halls and she hears people talking. And then someone says about Inez, she's like, you have to tell her that's her roommate. And so the professor eventually is like, I'm sorry to have to tell you, but a baby died. She's like, huh? So then they have a memorial for Baby in the auditorium or whatever. And the like headmaster, Victoria, she's giving a speech. And, she's like, we're sad because we miss her. It's this whole speech. And then shortly after that, Inez finds a newspaper clipping in like the library of somebody else who died at the school. And she sees like the quote from the headmaster again. It's like, we're sad because we miss her. Like, it's the speech is the same. And she's a little suspicious about it. Meanwhile, like, Inez is wanting to know more about this plasm and like what they're doing and what's going on with it. So she starts dating this boy named Theo, who now in their second year has gotten into the new materials concentration. And she's kind of like, maybe he can tell me what's going on. But he's real tight-lipped about it. And, she's not getting much out of him. So eventually, one day she steals the key card from his drawer. And she lets herself in to the lab in the middle of the night. She's like, if he's not going to tell me, I'm going to go find out for myself. So she breaks in, she goes exploring, she sees little rabbits in these cages because she had learned from him that one night she got him real drunk, and she did learn from him that they're doing experiments on mice and other little animals. And he had showed her like with the plasm. And so he showed her, he cut a little mouse on its tummy and then he hooked the mouse up with the little things and the mouse instantly healed. And he's telling her like, this is what we're working on here. Like, we could change human existence as it is. We can heal people really quickly. We can do all these things with this plasm. And she's like, okay. So anyway, one day shortly after that, she notices one of the aides around the campus is acting very strange. Like, he'll be walking and then he'll stop and just kind of short circuit. And she's like, what the hell's going on? And she's studying him. She's looking at him, and she realizes that he is the same boy from the picture in the newspaper clipping who had died years ago on campus. And she's like, what the hell? That's the same guy. So anyway, that's when she steals Theo's key and breaks in one night. She takes his hoodie, puts it up. She's like, okay, like, someone saw me from afar. They probably think I was Theo. She breaks in. In there is that guy, Sandy. Although she later learns his name was Alexander, and she's like, oh my God. And he's like, hello, like very robotic. And she's like, I'm not here. You didn't see me. He's like, okay. And then he goes and sits on a chair. So we're starting to get the idea that the main goal of this plasm, this whole operation, is like reanimating, like, it's either reanimating people who have died, or more likely stopping the aging process and animating them differently so they remain youthful but can still function. But like, clearly with this guy, it's not working great yet. So when she's going through, she sees rabbits. Eventually she goes a little further in, and then she sees a giant glass case, and in there is Baby, her roommate. And while part of her wants to open the case and let Baby out, she doesn't. And she doesn't even really know why she does that. But instead, she takes a bunny that she's been carrying around since she came into the lab, and she lets it out on the front lawn. Anyway, as the days pass, she's real sort of messed up about the whole thing, as you would be. But she tries to convince herself, like, okay, Baby chose this, I guess. Like, I guess she chose this. And she's kind of trying to convince herself of that so she can make peace with it. But she's not quite sure. She's not quite sure about that. Anyway, eventually, a few days pass and she hasn't seen Theo. She's asking around, like, does anyone know where Theo is? Eventually, she finds out that he's been put in the tower. She goes to talk to someone to try to find out why he's in the tower. And she learns that it's because he went into the lab after hours, let out a rabbit, the whole bit. And she's like, oh shit, because she knows that was her. So she sits with that for a while, and then eventually she goes and confesses that it was her and not Theo. And she is immediately taken to the tower. Theo, of course, is let out. Next up, she's once again stripped down and put in this room where there is nothing. Days pass, weeks pass. We don't know how much time has passed. Victoria comes in and she's giving her this speech. And then eventually she's like, you should do what Baby did and volunteer to come and be one of our test subjects so we can try to do it to you. And Ines is like, oh, no thanks, And then Veronica's like, you think about it. You got plenty of time to think about it. And then more time passes. Eventually she gets a visit from one of her close friends, Yaya. And Yaya's like, it's graduation day. And Inez realizes she's been locked in this room for a full semester. So Inez is just visiting, they're playing cards. And then before she leaves, she slips a card to Inez. And basically it's a reminder of like what they wanted to do. Because Yaya had always been like, when we're graduated, let's go to New York and explore and have fun. So it's like a reminder of that, and then a little tool to pick a lock. And instructions on what to do once she does. So Yaya goes, graduates, and then night falls, and Ines is getting ready, and she's like, oh, okay, we're going to do it. And she does it. She manages to get out, follows the instructions. She gets to where a truck is waiting for her with a man who's been working for decades at Catherine House, but is like over it. And he's going to take her as far as he can. And then finally the end of the book, the final bit is, daylight coming and them letting her out of the truck and her shielding her eyes from the sun as she gets out to freedom. So there you go. That was Catherine House. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I think it's 4 stars. But again, it's slow, especially at the beginning. But if you don't mind that, then I think you'll really enjoy it. Especially if you like sort of like gothic stories, taking place in university, dark academia vibes. I think you'll probably like this quite a bit. So there you go. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're enjoying October. I hope you're having beautiful weather with some relief from the heat if you're somewhere where it's warm. And I will see you guys again really soon. Bye.